Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. Tony ran a hand through his short brown hair, sighing heavily. At 25 years old, he should have been out building his own life, but here he was, still living at home and feeling more isolated than ever. His sisters had moved out years ago, pursuing successful careers and starting families of their own. Yet Tony remained, stuck in a job he hated and struggling to find his place in the world. The sound of laughter drifted through an open window, carried on the warm summer breeze. Tony peered outside, watching as a group of young women strolled past, their arms linked and heads thrown back in carefree joy. A familiar ache bloomed in his chest as he observed their easy camaraderie. "Must be nice," he muttered, turning away from the window. His gaze fell on the staircase leading to the second floor, where his sisters' old bedrooms remained largely untouched since they'd moved out. Tony hesitated for a moment before slowly climbing the stairs, drawn by a curiosity he couldn't quite explain. He paused outside his older sister Amanda's room, his hand hovering over the doorknob. Taking a deep breath, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was a time capsule of Amanda's teenage years, posters of boy bands on the walls, a vanity cluttered with makeup and hair accessories, and a closet bursting with colorful clothing. Tony moved to the closet, his fingers brushing against the soft fabrics of dresses and blouses. He pulled out a flowing sundress in a pale yellow, holding it up to his chest and studying his reflection in the full-length mirror on the closet door. "I wonder," he murmured, glancing around the empty house. Before he could talk himself out of it, Tony quickly stripped off his t-shirt and jeans. With trembling hands, he slipped the dress over his head, adjusting it to fit his broader frame. He smoothed down the skirt, marveling at the way the fabric swished around his legs. Heart pounding, Tony turned to face the mirror. The dress hung awkwardly on his masculine form, but there was something about the sight that made his breath catch in his throat. For a moment, he could almost imagine what he might look like as a woman. Softer features, long hair falling past his shoulders. "Is this what it would be like?" he whispered, twirling slowly. To be loved, to be noticed. Tony's eyes stung with unshed tears as he remembered countless family dinners where his accomplishments went unacknowledged while his sisters were praised. Birthday parties where his gifts seemed like afterthoughts compared to the carefully chosen presents his sisters received. The constant feeling of being overlooked, of being less than. "I wish," Tony's voice cracked as he spoke to his reflection. "I wish I had been born a girl. Maybe then they would love me." The air in the room suddenly felt charged, as if a storm was brewing indoors. Tony's skin prickled with goosebumps, and he wrapped his arms around himself, shivering despite the warm temperature. "Be careful what you wish for, young one," a lilting voice said from behind him. Tony whirled around, nearly tripping over the hem of the dress. His eyes widened in disbelief as he took in the sight before him. A small, ethereal figure stood in the center of the room, no taller than a child, but with an ageless face framed by pointed ears and flowing silver hair. The being's skin shimmered with an otherworldly glow, and mischievous eyes sparkled as they regarded Tony. What are you?" Tony stammered, backing up until he bumped into the mirror. The creature bowed with a flourish. "I am Finian, a granter of wishes and weaver of dreams. And you, my dear, have made quite the interesting wish." Tony shook his head, convinced he must be dreaming. "This can't be real. I must have fallen asleep on the couch." Finian chuckled, the sound like tinkling bells. "Oh, I assure you, this is very real. You wish to have been born a girl, did you not? To know what it's like to be loved and noticed by your family?"
Yes, but I didn't mean—"
"Wishes don't care about intentions, only desires," Finian interrupted, raising a delicate hand. "And your desire is clear. Are you prepared to embrace a new life, Tony Wilhelm? To see the world through different eyes?" Tony's mind raced. Part of him wanted to refuse, to laugh off this surreal encounter as a stress-induced hallucination. but a deeper part, the part that had always felt like a misfit in his own skin, whispered of possibilities and second chances. Will I remember my life as Tony? He asked hesitantly. Finian nodded, a knowing smile playing on his lips. You will retain all your memories, but your past will be rewritten. To the world, you will have always been who you become. Only you will know the truth of your transformation. Tony took a shaky breath, his heart pounding so hard he was sure Finian must be able to hear it. I want to know. I want to understand. Very well, Finian said, clapping his hands together. Close your eyes, Tony Wilhelm, and prepare to meet your new self. Tony squeezed his eyes shut, his entire body trembling with a mixture of fear and anticipation. A tingling sensation washed over him, starting at the top of his head and flowing down to his toes. He felt as if he were being unmade and remade, molecule by molecule. The sensation intensified until Tony thought he might cry out from the overwhelming feeling. Just when it became almost unbearable, it suddenly stopped. Open your eyes, Priscilla Wilhelm, Finian's voice said softly. Tony, no, Priscilla, slowly opened her eyes, blinking in confusion as the world came into focus. The room looked different somehow. Familiar, yet strange. She turned to the mirror, gasping at the reflection that greeted her. Gone was the broad-shouldered, square-jawed man she had been moments ago. In his place stood a young woman with delicate features, long chestnut hair cascading past her shoulders, and curves that filled out the yellow sundress perfectly. Priscilla raised a trembling hand to her face, marveling at the softness of her skin and the fullness of her lips. This is me, she whispered, her voice higher and melodious. Finian nodded, looking pleased with his handiwork. Indeed it is, my dear. How does it feel? Priscilla turned this way and that, examining her new body with a mixture of awe and trepidation. It's incredible, she admitted. But also terrifying. What happens now? Now, Finian said with a wink, you live your life as Priscilla. Remember, to everyone else, you have always been this way. Your memories as Tony will remain, but they will feel more like dreams or distant recollections. Before Priscilla could ask any more questions, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway made her jump. Finian's form began to fade, his voice growing fainter. Embrace your new life, Priscilla, and remember, be careful what you wish for. With that, the elf vanished, leaving Priscilla alone in the room that she now recognized as her own. Panic began to set in as she heard the front door open and her mother's voice call out. Priscilla, honey, are you home? Priscilla's heart raced as she tried to calm herself. This was what she had wished for, wasn't it? A chance to be loved and noticed by her family. Taking a deep breath, she called back. Yes, Mom, I'll be down in a minute. She quickly smoothed down her dress and ran a brush through her long hair, marveling at how natural the movements felt despite being so new. With one last glance in the mirror, Priscilla steeled herself and headed downstairs to face her new life. As she descended the stairs, Priscilla was struck by how different the house looked from this new perspective. Family photos that had once shown Tony now displayed Priscilla throughout the years. A gap-toothed girl on her first day of school, a teenager in a prom dress, a young woman in a graduation gown. Her mother, Elizabeth Wilhelm, stood in the kitchen unpacking groceries. She looked up as Priscilla entered, her face breaking into a warm smile. There's my girl. How was your day, sweetheart? Priscilla froze for a moment, overwhelmed by the affection in her mother's voice, affection that had been so rarely directed at Tony. It was good, she managed to say, her new voice still strange to her ears. Just a quiet day at home. Elizabeth crossed the kitchen and pulled Priscilla into a hug. The scent of her mother's perfume and the feeling of being held so lovingly brought tears to Priscilla's eyes. She hugged back fiercely, savoring the moment. Oh, honey, Elizabeth said, pulling back to look at her daughter's face. Is everything okay? You seem emotional. Priscilla wiped at her eyes, laughing softly. I'm fine, Mom. Just really glad to see you. Elizabeth cupped Priscilla's face in her hands, her eyes filled with concern and love. You know you can talk to me about anything, right? I'm always here for you. The words sent a pang through Priscilla's heart as she remembered all the times Tony had longed to hear those very words. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Well, Elizabeth said, returning to the groceries. Why don't you help me put these away? Your father will be home soon, and I thought we could have a nice family dinner tonight. Priscilla moved to help, marveling at how easily she fell into conversation with her mother. They chatted about Elizabeth's day at work, neighborhood gossip, and plans for the upcoming weekend. It was the kind of easy, affectionate interaction Tony had always craved but never experienced. As they worked, Priscilla's mind supplied her with memories of a life she hadn't actually lived, sleepovers with girlfriends, shopping trips with her mother and sisters, heart-to-heart talks about boyfriends and breakups. It was dizzying to have these new memories alongside her old ones, like two sets of film reels playing simultaneously in her mind. The sound of the front door opening announced her father's arrival. Robert Wilhelm's booming voice filled the house. "Where are my girls?" Elizabeth called back. "In the kitchen, dear." Priscilla's heart pounded as her father entered the room. Robert had always been a stern, somewhat distant figure in Tony's life. But the man who swept into the kitchen now had a twinkle in his eye and a warm smile on his face. "There's my Priscilla," he said, enveloping her in a bear hug. "How's my favorite youngest daughter today?" Priscilla melted into the embrace, relishing the affection she had always longed for. "I'm good, Dad," she mumbled into his chest. Robert pulled back, his hands on her shoulders as he looked her over. "You look a little pale, sweetheart. You're not coming down with something, are you?" The concern in his voice, so foreign to Tony's experiences, made Priscilla's throat tight. "No, I'm fine. Just a little tired, I guess." "Well, why don't you go relax while your mother and I finish up in here?" Robert suggested, giving her shoulder a gentle squeeze. "We'll call you when dinner's ready." Priscilla nodded gratefully and retreated to the living room, sinking onto the couch as her mind whirled with conflicting emotions. The love and attention she was receiving as Priscilla was everything Tony had ever wanted. Yet there was a hollowness to it, knowing that it wasn't really earned or genuine. It was the result of a magical transformation. As she sat there, trying to reconcile her old memories with her new reality, Priscilla's phone buzzed with an incoming text. She pulled it from her pocket, realizing with a start that it was a completely different model than the one Tony had owned. The text was from someone named Jess. "Hey girl, still on for girls' night tomorrow? Can't wait to hear all about your date with Chris." Priscilla stared at the message, her mind supplying her with information about Jess, her best friend since childhood, and Chris, a guy she had apparently been seeing for a few weeks. She typed out a quick affirmative response, marveling at how easily her fingers flew over the smaller keyboard. As she set the phone down, her gaze fell on a framed photo on the end table. It showed Priscilla sandwiched between her two older sisters, Amanda and Sophia, all three women grinning widely at the camera. The sight of her sisters sent a pang through her heart as she remembered how distant and competitive their relationships had been when she was Tony. New memories flooded her mind, giggling with Amanda as they tried on each other's clothes, Sophia teaching her how to apply makeup, late-night conversations about their hopes and dreams. The bond between them as sisters was strong and nurturing, everything Tony had wished for but never experienced. "Priscilla, dinner's ready," her mother's voice called from the kitchen. Taking a deep breath, Priscilla stood and made her way to the dining room. As she took her seat at the table, surrounded by the warmth and love of her family, she couldn't help but feel a bittersweet ache in her chest. This was everything Tony had ever wanted. But was it truly hers to claim? As the days passed, Priscilla found herself settling into her new life with surprising ease. The memories of her life as Tony began to feel more distant, like a half-remembered dream. Yet there were moments when the stark differences between her past and present would hit her with startling clarity. One such moment came during a weekend shopping trip with her mother and sisters. As they strolled through the mall, arms linked and laughter bubbling between them, Priscilla was struck by how natural it felt. Tony had always observed these kinds of female bonds from the outside, longing to be part of them, but never knowing how. "Oh, Priscilla, this would look gorgeous on you," Amanda exclaimed, holding up an emerald green dress against Priscilla's frame. "It really brings out your eyes." Sophia nodded in agreement. "You have to try it on, and then we can grab lunch at that new bistro. My treat." As Priscilla allowed herself to be ushered into a dressing room, she caught sight of her reflection in the mirror. The young woman staring back at her still felt like a stranger sometimes, despite the weeks that had passed since her transformation. She slipped on the dress. When she stepped out to show her family, their enthusiastic compliments brought a genuine smile to her face. "You look stunning, sweetheart," Elizabeth said, her eyes shining with pride. "My beautiful girl." The words sent a familiar pang through Priscilla's heart. How many times had Tony longed to hear such praise from his mother? The love and acceptance she now experienced daily was everything she had ever wanted. So why did it sometimes feel hollow? Later, as they sat in the bustling bistro, Priscilla found herself swept up in the easy conversation flowing between the women. They discussed work, relationships, and future plans with an openness that Tony had never experienced with his family. "So, little sis," Sophia said, leaning in conspiratorially. "How are things going with Chris? You've been pretty quiet about him lately." Priscilla felt her cheeks heat up as her mind supplied her with memories of recent dates. "It's going well," she admitted shyly. "He's really sweet." Amanda squealed in delight. "I knew it! Oh, Priscilla, I'm so happy for you. You deserve someone who treats you right." As her sisters and mother eagerly asked for more details, Priscilla felt a strange disconnect. Part of her reveled in the intimacy of the moment, the easy way she could share her feelings with these women who loved her. But another part, the part that still remembered being Tony, felt like an imposter. That night, as Priscilla lay in bed staring at the ceiling of her childhood room, she found herself grappling with conflicting emotions. The love and attention she received as Priscilla was everything Tony had ever craved. Yet there were moments when she missed aspects of her old life, the simplicity of male friendships, the freedom from certain societal expectations placed on women. She thought about Chris, the man she was supposedly dating. While her new memories told her she was attracted to him, the part of her that had been Tony felt uncomfortable with the idea of romantic involvement with a man. It was a strange dichotomy, having the mindset of both a heterosexual man and a heterosexual woman occupying the same consciousness. As weeks turned into months, Priscilla found herself fully immersed in her new life. She excelled at her job as a graphic designer, cultivated deep friendships with other women, and enjoyed a closeness with her family that Tony had only dreamed of. Yet there remained a small, persistent voice in the back of her mind that whispered of the life she had left behind. One evening, as Priscilla sat on the porch swing nursing a cup of hot cocoa, her father joined her. Robert settled onto the swing beside her, the wood creaking slightly under his weight. "Penny for your thoughts, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice gentle. Priscilla turned to look at him, struck by the open concern on his face. It was an expression she had rarely seen directed at Tony. "I'm just thinking about life, I guess," she said carefully. "How things change, how people change." Robert nodded thoughtfully. "You've seemed a bit distant lately. Your mother and I have been worried. Is everything all right?" The genuine concern in his voice made Priscilla's throat tighten. She thought about all the times Tony had longed for this kind of attention from his father, all the times he had needed guidance but felt too afraid or ashamed to ask. "Dad," she began hesitantly, "do you ever wonder what your life would be like if you had made different choices? If you had been someone else?" Robert was quiet for a moment, considering her words.
"I suppose everyone thinks about that from time to time," he said slowly. "But I've found that dwelling on what-ifs rarely leads anywhere good. The best we can do is make the most of the life we have." He reached out and took Priscilla's hand in his own, his touch warm and comforting. "You know we love you, right? No matter what choices you make, no matter who you become, you'll always be our daughter and we'll always be here for you." Tears welled up in Priscilla's eyes at his words. She leaned into her father's side, allowing him to wrap an arm around her shoulders. As they sat there in comfortable silence, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Priscilla felt a sense of peace settle over her. Yes, there were aspects of being Tony that she missed. The simplicity of male friendships, the lack of certain societal pressures, the comfort of a body she had known for 25 years. But the love and acceptance she had found as Priscilla, wasn't that what Tony had always truly wanted? As the weeks turned into months, Priscilla found herself fully embracing her new life. She excelled in her career, cultivated deep and meaningful friendships, and reveled in the close bond she now shared with her family. The memories of her life as Tony began to fade, becoming more like half-remembered dreams than lived experiences. Yet there were still moments when the gravity of her transformation would hit her. One such moment came on a warm summer evening, almost a year after her wish had been granted. Priscilla stood in front of her bedroom mirror, preparing for a date with Chris. As she applied her makeup with practiced ease, she caught sight of a photo tucked into the corner of the mirror frame. It was an old picture of Tony taken just weeks before the transformation. Priscilla's hand trembled as she picked up the photo, studying the face that now seemed so foreign to her. She remembered the pain and loneliness in those eyes, the desperate wish that had changed everything. "Are you happy now?" she whispered to the image of her former self. "Is this what you wanted?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. Priscilla set the photo down, her mind whirling with conflicting emotions. She had everything Tony had ever wanted: love, acceptance, a sense of belonging. But was it truly earned? Was it real? A soft knock on her bedroom door startled her from her reverie. "Priscilla?" her mother's voice called. "Chris is here, sweetheart." Priscilla took a deep breath, pushing away the lingering doubts. "Coming, Mom?" she called back, giving herself one last look in the mirror. As she descended the stairs, she saw Chris waiting in the foyer, chatting easily with her parents. The sight of him, tall, handsome, and looking at her with undisguised adoration, sent a flutter through her heart. It was a feeling that still sometimes caught her off guard, a reminder of how much her life had changed. "You look beautiful," Chris said softly as she reached him, leaning in to kiss her cheek. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.